Hi, my name's Dave Stevens, and this is our second mini workshop for Samhain. This particular workshop is on spiritual alchemy. Alchemy has a long history, and we find evidence of it as far back as ancient Egypt, and it's still being practiced to this day. Um, what alchemy is it's the study and philosophy of how to change base substances, like metals, um, into other substances. Um, it also studied how substances and when they were changed and heated and whatnot, how they related to spirituality, how they related to astrology, the planets, and how they related to magic. The people who studied alchemy were called alchemists. Um, but at the heart of it, alchemy was about studying how the divine created existence. It's really about figuring out how did they do it? Can we as human beings create something similar? And if we know something, then we know a little bit about who created it. It's kind of like the idea that by knowing the creation, we can know God, we can know Goddess. By working with these human-made attempts at various things, like turning lead into gold, we can, creating a man-made gold, we can come closer to God. And the ideas around alchemy and what alchemy stood for and what the alchemists were searching for kind of changed over the years. And they went through various fields of study, like the Paracelsian alchemists eventually created what we would know as chemical medicine. All the pills that we take on a nearly daily basis can be attributed to the Paracelsian alchemists. At the heart of it, a lot of the alchemists were searching for the ability to turn base lead into gold. They had kind of forgotten about the spiritual pursuits of early on, and instead were searching for, let's make some money. And when that wasn't working out for them, they started looking at other fields, or they just kind of or looking at it in a different way. One of these different groups, the spiritual alchemists, believed that the concept of turning your base spiritual lead into gold was about turning you, in your unrefined state, to the refined state of being gold, which was the highest of the elements in their minds, the most spiritual of the elements. After all, it is mentioned in many holy books and whatnot. So gold is at the height of it, a very spiritual thing. It has many spiritual connotations. There are several schools of spiritual alchemy, but most of them work with mantra, and a few, and some will combine mantra and magic and the traditional heating of metals and things like that into one. But what I'm going to teach tonight is a system of spiritual alchemy based completely on mantra. And what the mantras do in this case is they attract the power of what we want. And in this case, the power that we want is the power of the planets, the power of the zodiac, the power a little less about the stars and more directly our planets. When we were born, the planets imprint their energy upon us. It creates kind of like in a strange way, it kind of creates a karma. It's how we're going to live life. It's part of the test that we live life in. Maybe in this lifetime, we're more financially savvy than we were in the previous one, if you subscribe to reincarnation. Or perhaps we may be more gifted at speech or various things. But when we work directly with the energy of the planets through these mantra, we decrease the negative effects on the planet. The planets that are ill cast in our chart suddenly become more neutral in character or outright helpful. It's not uncommon in the East that when a couple is about to be married, they will go and see an astrologer, and the astrologer will say whether it's a good match or not. And if the astrologer says, well, you know what, this isn't a good match, oftentimes the couples will split up and say, well, we need to find someone who's going to make this work. Or the astrologer will give the bride and groom or thereof mantras to practice, astrological talismans, or do mystical rites, all with the idea of either neutralizing the negative effects in the chart of the couple directly, or making the person's individual planets more neutral. In this case, what I will be teaching is how to make your individual planets neutral, at the very least, and possibly quite empowering. To practice this spiritual technique, I would ask you to take on what we're going to call a spiritual practice. So you're going to need to do dedicated practice to get the results. This is not going to show up in a week or 2 weeks, 3 months or 6 months. You're going to really see the benefits of it about a year out. And when you do, you will be astonished because your life will be very different. I have done extensive training with this, and I have seen massive changes in how my life functions. I have seen prosperity roll in. I have seen relationships change overnight. People I didn't get along with, suddenly we're getting along with. All kinds of different benefits that were very overt. And it's all from practicing this kind of work consistently. It's also very easy to do. You're going to need a dedicated space. I would say get a chair, put it in a quiet corner of a room where you're not going to be disturbed, and practice as consistently at the same time as possible. I would suggest either at night or in the early morning. If you can get up as early as 5:30, the spiritual currents at that time are very conducive to any form of spiritual practice. It's one of the reasons why you'll see Taiji players out there practicing their movements in the park early in the morning. The mystical currents, the chi in the air is better. The prana is stronger. Then the same with mantra. The spiritual currents of the day are generally stronger in the mornings. What I would suggest is that you have your chart read. You can go online and look for a natal chart. You can get a free natal chart cast. I would say a free natal chart with whole signs is the best. The whole signs is the oldest system, and it is far more accurate than a lot of the modern stuff that's out there. I'm a little biased. I'm a whole sign astrologer trained, and having used both systems, the older one is far better, and it's closer to what the ancients had originally intended for the systems. And there are whole sign stuff for the modern planets as well, if you subscribe to them as well. But what I'm going to be teaching you is the traditional 7 planets that the ancients could see with their eye, or at least initially you could see out to Jupiter with a telescope, and now you can see much further. So what you're going to do is you're going to sit in your chair, or perhaps you've got a cushion to sit on, or whatever is going to make you comfortable. Turn off the lights. Sit in a kind of a darkened space if you can. And since you've got your charts there, find out what you're deficient in. Or decide what you want more of. Say we're having prosperity issues. Like our money is not coming in. COVID's a nasty time for a lot of people. I would suggest you go to Mercury. Mercury is the planet of commerce, the planet of jobs, the planet of money exchange. Chant the mantra for, or in this case, the word of power for Mercury, which is Jala Tatil. On a sideline, the mantras that I'm giving you are from the Arabic tradition called Ruhaniya, which is a mystical tradition that was started. Its basis begins in Sumeria, and has very much an unbroken line of practice all through it. Although it's called Arabic magic, the people willing to work with magic didn't care about that it was strict, that they were always praying to Allah or praising Muhammad. They wanted results. So it's not uncommon to see an amulet that has the names of the Sumerian or Babylonian gods and Gilgamesh, or Jewish magic mixed in. Many of the secrets to Kabbalah can be found in Ruhaniya. These particular names are also in the Kabbalistic systems, and they are a closely guarded secret that I am giving to you for free, because I am not a big fan of secrets that benefit everybody. So, Jala Tatil was the mantra, the word of power, for Mercury. Say we're having a hard time with our emotions. We have lots of anxiety. Mental issues keep coming up. COVID is a very bad time for a lot of us. Or just there's a lot of stress in our life, regardless of other things. And then we would probably use something for the moon. The mantra for the moon is Lak Hat Tatil. Perhaps we're having love issues or relationship problems. And relationship can be like a family problem or a romantic problem. Or we're butting heads a lot with our spouse or our significant other. In that case, we would use Naha Tatil, the mantra for Venus. Perhaps we are looking to affect our life from kind of a global way. Then we would enter into using the sun. In modern astrology, we all like to say, what's my sun sign? I'm an Aries, so I'm supposed to be big and pushy. But the mantra for the sun is Fa Tob Til. Fa Tob Til. If we want to be working with a mantra that affects kind of like destiny, it's kind of like playing the long game, I might work with Saturn. And Saturn is Lel Tatil. And Saturn's a very powerful mantra. And I really suggest it more for people that are kind of like They've had their Saturn return in their 30s, and that's kind of when you want to start working with it. When you're younger, the energies, um, they don't necessarily always mesh as well. Um, but I do definitely suggest, 30s, 40s, 50s, work with Saturn as much as you'd like. Jupiter is the great judge. He's also the great guru. It's a masculine energy for Jupiter. Jupiter's power, so it's the great judge. So if you're having any legal problems at all, you can chant the mantra for Jupiter, or spiritual issues. He's the great guru. In the Western or the Eastern tradition, calls him the great guru or the spiritual teacher, the provider of spiritual opportunities, or perhaps understanding spiritual dilemmas and whatnot. The mantra for Jupiter is Matatil. Matatil. Perhaps you wake up in the morning and you need a boost. You had a good last night and maybe went to bed a little bit too late. Or you're playing a sport. You're out on the ring, you got your stick in your hand, and you're dragging. That's where Mars comes in. Mars is the planet of energy. It's also the planet of aggression. If you need to go into a boardroom and state your case powerfully, you would chant Mars. Qua tatil. Qua. Q. The Q begins with Q. It's the most difficult of all of them to do. Qua tatil. Qua tatil. Mars is the energy of Mars comes very strong and very quick. And I caution you to use Mars a lot only if you don't have a lot of it in your chart. If you have a lot in your chart, the energy shows up really quick. And my wife calls me, she called me, a jerk was probably the nicest thing that she's called me when she's seen that I've done a lot of Mars work, because it's very strong. So I can be pretty aggressive, and so I tone my Mars work down a lot. But I will also have these words listed on the site, so that on our page, so that you can see them and copy them into your Book of Shadows or Grimoire or whatever your tradition works with. And really, these mantras work regardless of belief system. They really don't care. The spiritual emanations of these mantras will work for anybody. If you believe they will work far better. But even if you're kind of resisting them, they will still work. So I suggest giving them a try. And like I said, it's kind of a long game. But if a planet is well aspected in your chart, you will see that the power that comes from chanting that will come to you much, much more quickly. If they are not well aspected, it takes time to overcome the difficulties in your chart, and then they start growing in power. But I suggest picking a problem in your life, or picking something that you would like to boost, and chanting it. And if you're having any issues in your relationship, turn to Venus. So I personally include 4 or 5 of these mantras in my daily practice every day. And I chant in the thousands of mantras. So it is a good practice. It's an easy practice, and it's a powerful practice. And if you did nothing else in your life but practice these, you will go far. So with that said, enjoy your Samhain or Halloween night, and I will see you on the next workshop.